Welcome back to The Young Voter. Today we're going to discuss the state of the Senate race in Florida. There are three candidates in the Senate race there: Marco Rubio, the Republican candidate; Charlie Crist, the former governor of the state, the independent candidate; and Kendrick Meek, the Democratic candidate. Marco Rubio is Tea Party supported, and he forced Charlie Crist out of the Republican primary. Before the primary took place, Crist saw the polls and decided that he would make an independent bid. So right now, the race is fairly competitive between Crist and Rubio, though Rubio seems to be leading by about 5 or 6 points. Kendrick Meek is way behind, far behind, about 10 to 15 points behind both of his frontrunners, the other two candidates. So today, an important endorsement occurred in the Senate race. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the nephew of the late President John F. Kennedy, endorsed Charlie Crist for senator in the race. Now, this is significant because he is the most high-profile Democratic endorsement Charlie Crist has received so far. And he said that he was doing this in order to prevent Marco Rubio from getting elected. And he stated, as one of the reasons for not supporting Mr. Meek, was because he didn't think Mr. Meek could be elected. Kendrick Meek could be elected on Election Day. He said he had looked at the polling, and he really had only decided over the past couple of days to endorse Charlie Crist. He said that Crist's record on the environment specifically encourages him, and he thinks Mr. Crist is very strong. RFK Jr. is a strong environmentalist, and he approves of Crist's support for solar power, specifically, he mentioned at the endorsement ceremony, and also the environmental record as a whole. He said that, quote, "I hope that Kendrick will look at the entire landscape as he assesses the future," meaning the Democratic candidate. So I guess he's hoping that Kendrick Meek might drop out of the race. Now again, this is not certain. There's been much speculation over the past few weeks as to whether Kendrick Meek would drop out of the race. Some rumors going around Democratic circles were that he was being encouraged to drop out of the race, and in compensation he would receive an appointment or some sort of job in the Obama administration. And in exchange for getting Democratic support, Charlie Crist would be caucusing with the Democrats in the next Senate session. So that's interesting, but again, those are rumors, and the Meek campaign came out strongly, specifically after this endorsement, that Kendrick Meek was not dropping out of the race, and that he would continue to run in the race, and said that they are looking forward to election night, and that they think that they have a chance, and that the race is far from over. So that's expected from a candidate who's running in the Senate. He's obviously not immediately going to say he's dropping out, but there is talk about that. Now, another reason, probably the most important reason that RFK cited for not endorsing Meek and endorsing Crist was that he really wants to stop Rubio. I mean, he's called Marco Rubio, a radical, and I quote, "a radical, a crackpot, and a sock puppet." I mean, he really thinks that Rubio is bad for the state of Florida, and he specifically mentioned Rubio's opposition to cap and trade, Rubio's denial of climate change. Marco Rubio does not believe that climate change is occurring, and also he accuses Rubio, or at least he states that Rubio believes, and this Rubio has stated, that an environmental policy that the United States would follow would put the U.S. at a global disadvantage in terms of losing jobs to China, etc. And RFK Jr. cited the fact that, in fact, no pun intended, a lot of jobs have actually been shipped over to China and have been outsourced because the U.S. isn't espousing an environmental policy that is more aggressive than it is currently. So again, this is interesting, and why are we discussing this here on The Young Voter? Well, we're discussing this because this is really a significant development in the race. And more broadly, it's important to see what will happen in this race. I mean, will Democrats and independents, the center and the left, coalesce in order to stop Marco Rubio, who is generally considered to be one of the most conservative candidates out there running for Senate in any of the Senate races. I mean, he obviously opposes health care reform. He obviously opposes the stimulus, the banking regulations. He is against the environment. He believes that the minimum wage is unconstitutional. He probably wants to abolish the Department of Education. I mean, he is very far to the right. And if you're a voter in Florida who agrees with that, again, of course, he wants to get rid of Social Security and Medicare. So if you're a voter in Florida, you'll vote with your interests, and if you agree with Marco Rubio on these issues, then you'll vote against him. I mean, you'll vote with him. If you disagree with him, you'll vote against him. Now, the question is, will Democrats in Florida back away from Mr. Meek at this moment? Not just because of Robert Kennedy's endorsement of Charlie Crist, but also because the polls are showing Meek trailing. And I get in the best interests of Democrats in the state would be to take the lesser of two evils, which in this case would be Charlie Crist, because it really doesn't appear that Kendrick Meek has any chance of winning. Now you ask, is it really improbable that Kendrick Meek will win? Well, he's polling roughly about 20% of the vote right now, and Marco Rubio is about 45%, and Charlie Crist is about 38%. So he's trailing both of his challengers, and he's not doing well on the poll. So it's unlikely, and doesn't seem as if there's a clear path to victory for him. I mean, also he's not well known. I mean, Marco Rubio and Charlie Crist have received a lot more media attention in this race. So Mr. Meek is not very recognizable, and Florida being the eternal swing state, but a fairly red state until a few years ago, certainly is going to be is probably going to be more in the center. Maybe I wouldn't say it's a conservative state, but I would definitely say it's more in the center, and Meek is certainly on the left. So Crist should appeal to a plurality of voters in Florida. Now the question is, can he siphon off votes from Kendrick Meek, or can he even convince him to quit the race? Now that's really the multi-million-dollar question. Now, what Crist will be trying to do in order to win those votes will be to portray what Rubio would do when he's elected to the Senate. Obviously, I mean, he would vote party line all the way in terms of Republicans. I mean, he would certainly not. I'm confident in saying, and I think a lot of analysts are confident in saying, that he wouldn't vote in any sort of Democratic proposal in favor of that upset proposal. He certainly would be very conservative, and he's Tea Party backed. So certainly, I mean, he's very conservative and opposes any sort of government control over anything. So obviously, he could be. I mean, he is a radical in that sense. He enjoys conservative support in Florida, but at the moment, again, support between Crist and Meek certainly is dividing the center and the left. Now, the question is, if Meek drops out of the race, will all of Meek's supporters vote for Crist? That's the million-dollar question. And again, the undecideds, how are they going to go? So if you're a voter in Florida, you really need to look at the issues. You really need to see how important Meek's issues are to you, how important Charlie Crist's issues are to you, and how important Marco Rubio's issues are to you, and see if you agree which candidate really fits your model in terms of being in sync with your ideas. So you really need to see also, this is always the eternal question for people toying with third-party candidates. Are they viable? Am I wasting a vote? Now the question is really, the third-party candidate is more favored in this election, Charlie Crist, than the Democrat. So the question is, as a Democrat, should you, in order to stop Marco Rubio, vote for Crist as opposed to Meek? Now that's your decision, but now you have to weigh that, conscious that Marco Rubio has a big chance of winning. Will a vote for Kendrick Meek be a vote for Marco Rubio? And Democrats across the state and people that are supporting Meek need to really realize and come to terms with that. They need to have a long talk with themselves and see where support should be channeled. The same thing for Crist supporters. I mean, now they need to see, are they solidly with Crist? Would they perhaps prefer Meek? I mean, the voters, the undecided specifically, are going to make this decision, or people supporting Meek currently. So I think those voters in particular need to pay attention to all the issues and see the differences between the candidates. I think it's very important that you don't, if you're in those categories, if you're a Meek supporter or an undecided voter specifically, you need to open your eyes and make sure that the issues, every issue is examined, and you see who you support, and think strategically. Don't just think about the issues. I mean, obviously those are important to you, but think strategically. Would you rather vote solely on issues and perhaps have a greater chance of losing, or would you be willing to compromise the issues and get someone elected who perhaps will be more of a centrist? Again, I'm not advocating anybody do anything, but I'm not advocating anybody, I mean, vote for anybody, but I think, people need to weigh the pros and cons and need to be careful and need to try to look forward and figure out what is going on in the Senate race there, because it's a horse race at the moment and the future's unpredictable. All right. Thank you very much, again, for watching The Young Voter.